Welcome back YouTubers to my channel. If you're new to my channel and you landed on my page for whatever reason, I welcome you all. I'm Aspie. I'm all about creating mental health and awareness and sharing my life stories with Asperger's syndrome, OCD and the like, along with also based on my knowledge and experience along the way, as well as also hopefully some of these topics I share, whatever they are, will be based on my training as well that I did a few years back, so that hopefully that you guys can learn and educate from each other, as well as maybe we can interact somehow one way or another through this, or just outside the community of YouTube. So it's been brought to my attention, as I said before, that I would like to try and bring out as many of the autism and series, which is briefly on hold, because I want to clearly address to you all some of the important topics that I looked at so far in the Altogether Autism conference files that I have clearly been researching and doing on my own accord, as well as with the help and guidance of some people that I would like to thank for them to actually help me in a way. Joanna Doakim, I think it's pronounced as, Tanya Patterson obviously, and some of the team of the Altogether Autism, organisation that has briefly just shared me some research papers to share. Strongly really are against about substance abuse, but as you know, my passion lies in mental health and just health in general, as well as science and some other key factors that I want to share with you all today. I'm hoping that this could include also the behavioural addictions that revolves around this, as well as the repetitive actions that you may see basically through us autistics, whether it's some of the stuff that really pisses you off, excuse my term, or just make you frustrated, and you tend to question why we tend to do these repetitive patterns of what we do in our everyday life. It's just, some of it could be a force of habit for some of us, for the repetitive routine. Some of it is just we may not know anything else outside our routine structure or whatever, but a bit of guidance along the way, as well as patience, empathy, would be much appreciated. But as I said before, I would like to also include the behavioural actions or repetitive actions, regardless if it is shopping, sex, gambling, gaming, whatever I have shared so far in some of my videos. People will always tend to do what they can do to ease their pain and burden of whatever it may be, and sometimes the clear result is substance abuse or drug abuse of some kind. Sometimes it may be just really bad luck in a way of things, that at the point when you're searching for something to fill a void or to ease your pain, sometimes it could be other factors. It's just like the peer pressure, you want to fit in, and obviously you're seeing your mates doing drugs and alcohol, and you may be thinking, I want to do this, what's this is all about and stuff, and then you happen to be obviously exposed by drugs maybe at a young age, be it in your early teens or what have you. Sometimes that you see your maybe relatives smoking pot or what have you. Although there are also definitely some genetic factors that has formed around addiction of certain things, in the genetic factors, this can be really similar to those of the genetic factors for people with autism. However, sometimes at times like these, substance use can be used simply by about exposure and just timing, So for me today, I want to clearly, and I can't stress it enough, to urge you guys who are watching this to view drug use as stigmatized as it is, and not clearly understood, basically, as another way that this behaviour is a form of communication. This is especially important when one thinking of an autistic person, diagnosed or not, however, they're still looking for answers, or they're still looking for a diagnostic route if they haven't done so already. Concerning or not so typical communication styles that we have, be it if we're verbal or non-verbal or whatever it may be that we are. You may need to question yourselves today though, however, while I'm addressing this, what are these persons' actions reflecting on? What's going on really inside of them, or what is clearly going on regardless around them or whatever. Sometimes we need to reach out to those that needs the help, hopefully, if we know the signs and symptoms quick enough. What are they wanting to communicate to us? Demonisation of a person who happens upon a substance is a way to relieve suffering from certain horrible experiences that they've been through, or as I said before, relieve their pain, whatever it may be, physical, mental state of mind. It's just the way it is, apparently. Suffering, to relieve the suffering, obviously, when it comes down to substance abuse or whatever, is really horrible and it serves no purpose, however. And aside all that, from pushing them further down the drain and actually just, pushing them to the cause of just wanting to think. From my experiences, from what I've seen and heard, basically, from many people that I have got to know in the past and present, of people I have been trying to socialise with and whatever, after all, they're still people, whoever they may be it autistic or not, who aren't, out to purposely harm themselves regardless what they're doing, or even harming others around them. You've got to bear in mind that people a lot of the times, though, however, say that they want to make sense of the world, they just want to blend in, fit in, they feel icky, or they feel like the little black sheep amongst the white sheep, they just feel like an outcast, they feel like just some other labels that probably have been put upon them regardless. Maybe some of the times also they want to ease their pain, and again, I can't stress it enough, the main key factor is trying to fit in and blend in with their groups and actually be the cool kid amongst the group or what have you. This is very common though, and very few people I have met and heard from may have used drugs, has woken up to reality and actually said that they have become a drug user so they can hurt, harm and shame themselves and their whānau because obviously of what they're probably going through personally in their mental state versus the physical state, or just some environmental factors that draw them in to do this form of addiction or form of substance abuse regardless. For many autistic people maybe who has experienced it or has with substance use problems, has double the stigma associated with them. You may be questioning double the stigma, what do I mean here? Interestingly enough, basically, as I said, there has been a lot of stigma around autism that is more potent than the addiction stigma, however. Think along the lines of this, maybe. Oh, can you please help me? I have been injecting heroin for quite some time. This sounds serious, doesn't it? Let's see how we can help you. This would likely be, the response that you may get or may not. Or this would be likely the response, not something like, I have been injecting heroin, please help me. And then the response from the opposite side of the party who hasn't done substance abuse may say, well, you don't look like you have been injecting heroin. It must only be a little heroin. I've occasionally thought of injecting heroin myself, so you must be normal. You will be fine. This is almost similar to what I shared before about some of the stereotyping about what autistic is like, with all these common statements that we get heard about. You don't look autistic, you look normal, and all the other, stigmatalities, but that's just life, obviously. And obviously, along with mental health and everything else that I shared today, obviously of the stereotyping and stigmatization around it, obviously needs to be done something about it. To break it down to you, or to compound this double stigma, an autistic person who has a substance dependence gets handed between everyday services, be it mental health and every other services, be it addiction services if they were going through a series of addiction. And then they'll be handed back to the maybe disability services or what have you, even though in New Zealand here, as what I've seen, obviously so far for people with autism and the like, to what I've been hearing on the grapevine, there's limited resources and limited services basically for us, and I'm hoping in due time in the near future there will be more services for people with autism, especially the ones that are in maybe here say their late teens transitioning to adulthood, because obviously, as I said before, autism and Asperger's syndrome is clearly diagnosed at an early age, between the tender age of 2 and 3, when kids may seem to look and act normal, when they, tend to socialise with their peers and whatnot. Obviously, we're not only marginalised and stigmatised, however, we are also excluded from the support and assistance that we so deserve, obviously, as I just clearly shared. So this needs to be changed somehow, as well as people's change of mindsets and whatnot. But then again, people's attitude towards people that are different obviously is disgusting from what I've seen and heard. And from what I've experienced also, after finding out, yes, I'm different, and after sharing my story, trying to break down the walls of saying, no, enough is enough, I want to do something about it. But even if I am just sitting here talking to you guys in front of this full screen, hopefully somehow I can reach out further to people along the way. I believe in some ways there needs to be a change somehow, even though people don't like the word change, hearsay, be it autistic or not, be it people being different and whatnot. People may either A, afraid of just coming up to us knowing full done well how to handle us, from what I've experienced, past and present, from when I clearly addressed my book versus just telling people what I am, it's just a sad fact in reality. People just tend to treat you differently, and sometimes it's just that we are humans as well, and many people, as I said, still has this misunderstanding, misgiving about people that are autistic. In saying this though, I hope for this video that it can and will shift some fear and maybe some of the stigmatization, along with many of the misunderstandings, so that we can better assist autistic people who may have problems with drugs, alcohol abuse or substance abuse, what have you, to assist them. Regardless of what it is, I believe that we should be able to desensitize that one way or another, in the right form of treatment or right form of care or right form of handling people with different needs, regardless autistic or not, as I shared. Whether they were diagnosed and fully confused and mistreated due to their differences, regardless of what it is, or maybe they had an earlier diagnosis that resulted in extensive behavioural therapy, or you might call it breaking in therapy, or maybe they just felt different and confused. These experiences cause trauma and often results PTSD, which is very common in autistic people. Trauma and repercussions, often being traumatized, and the results of just being disconnected from the outside world. This disconnect from either themselves, spirit, whānau, is one of the major risk factors for mental health issues that will include the substance abuse, as well as dependence on the drugs or substance. This may include also other behaviours such as gambling, unhealthy relationships with people, pornography. Why? Key concepts to it. We need to question why. Why is it happening, or what have you. A quote from an author of a great book on addiction has titled, "Chasing the Scream is the cure for addiction is connection." Since connection is one of the areas that autistics find very challenging in our everyday lives, regardless if we try to connect with our peers or family, friends or whatever, as well as just socializing and whatnot, this increased risk makes sense. However, to maybe this is why it's happening. Typical social practices are often not our thing, resulting in less protective factors. Again, keep in mind of the following concepts that are translatable to other habits or behaviours that may become problematic in due time, or due to time, money, and attention that is spent on them, such as the gaming, gambling, sex, etc. Social interactions and communication, social lubrication, executive functioning, impulsivity, autistic inertia, can't start or stop, sensory plus or negative. Seekers may use uppers, speed, P. Avoiders may prefer downers, opiates. So what I'm meaning here with this to be continued of the key concepts that overlap with the psychological health, addiction and autism in this brief short but others. Social interactions and communication. You will be familiar with the saying social lubrication when talking about alcohol, right? And from what I've experienced or seen in the past, basically, and the observations of others, this type of alcoholic lubrication can be the gateway to relax on alcoholism, or the lead to any other forms of substances that they can get their hands on. In fact, many current research has clearly shown that people who go on to have addiction issues began with alcohol, not tobacco or cannabis. Why is this? This is because it's socially acceptable, even socially encouraged. It helps with the communication, reduces inhibition, it's really cheap, easily available, and is fully legal. Other substances, however, may also serve as social lubricants, connectors, and can become the basis for interactions and conversation starters. Executive functioning, as I mentioned. Impulsivity, acting quickly without thinking. and compulsivity, or being unable to stop an activity once it has begun, are both problems of the executive function. These tendencies are strongly linked with the risk for becoming addicted. Here, addiction is defined as compulsive drug use that persists despite negative consequences. I believe autistic inertia also comes into play here also. This is a tendency to have trouble studying or stopping. This may be or trouble stopping the behaviours that are having the negative outcomes, or trouble starting treatment or recovery. Sensory plus or sensory minus. Sensory issues can present confusion about what feels good or bad. Among this confusion, this can contradict what we were taught. For example, we are told drugs are bad, but they may feel quite good. This decreases the ability to identify what may be harmless and what might be harmful. Furthermore, though, however, for the sensory seekers and avoiders, they may find some kind of peace, solace, some risk-taking behaviours, or sensory avoiders may find relief in the numbing effects of this substance abuse. In the case of this addiction, different types of substances can enhance or reduce sensation. For example, a person who seeks sensory stimuli may also be drawn to the other types of drug like Ritalin or P. And people who avoid sensory sensation may be drawn to opiates or benzodiazepines. For many, using a substance that is a form of self-medication for co-occurring problems, both physical and psychological, however, anxiety is very likely at the top of this A list. Also, there has been clear statistics around people with ADHD and PDA having high rates of addiction. A high percentage of adults, however, who has been treated for alcohol and other substance abuse also has ADHD. The two of them go hand in hand, sadly. Distraction and impulsiveness, both hallmarks of ADHD, can make it easier to fall into these patterns of addiction. So too can the stressful dealing with ADHD, especially if it's not properly treated. The thing about self-medicating is that they may make it feel though it can be useful at times. However, once the fulcrum tips and the usefulness has turned into psychological or physical dependencies, things do change rapidly. Any of the helpful parts of using the drug of choice are mostly eliminated. Community. Using substances can give you an instant community group with a common community core. As with many of us neurodivergent beings, many of us may have been bullied and excluded no matter what age we were when we were transitioning from a young child in primary school upwards to maybe when we were adult. I found when I was in schools that some peers were into alcohol and drugs / marijuana and whatever, they seemed to be happy, and I wasn't even included in the group. Even though basically while being in the group, if I did try to invite myself in, I just felt, and in saying this though, there has been a drug culture in the probably 90s or late 90s, early 2000s that probably helps people to feel included in the group or part of a group. They felt accepted, and then they won't be constantly reminded or asked about why did you say that, or why were you doing groups for autistics, be it whatever they are, altogether autism, and the like of the pages that I am on Facebook. Basically, I felt like I am in a welcome to being autistic and whatnot, and being accepted within a community that doesn't tease, bully, or ridicule me for being myself. However, relationships. Substances use can be like having a relationship, albeit an abusive relationship. And in such situation, people often stay because they know what to expect. Change may seem scary for most of us, the unknown, and frankly can even feel harder than staying put. Using a drug can be predictable, even if that predictable outcome is not so positive. At least you know what to expect from that drug. The thing is though, it might make you feel like shit, however it does that every time you use it. So if you can count on it in a way you can't count on much else. Much like if you've been in an abusive relationship, he says, a classic example. Another form of respect using these drugs is a surefire way to push people away, be it family, friends, co-workers, the like, thus reducing your relationship load, which can be less stressful for you. This then your drug will become your friend of choice. Important one, people might self-medicate for chronic pain. Of all the chronic pains, be it fibromyalgia, dysautonomia, hypermobility, TMJ, irritable bowel, migraines, and Ehlers-Danlos, to name just a few, which is a collagen disorder, are all too common in the autistic community. Also, other physical issues such as autoimmune issues. Currently, there's not enough medical understanding of these issues and how they are linked. I believe that This is due to the main focus on altering our behaviours or spending billions finding out why are we autistic. This means most of us will either suffer, self-medicate, or be mismanaged in many clinical settings. Education and harm reduction. TV, media, accepted drinking culture, poor drug education. Anthropologically, people have always thought ways to ease pain. Drugs are bad. Importantly, sensory issues present confusion about what feels good and bad, and which was contradicted to what we were taught. This decreases the ability to identify what might be nice and what might be harmful to us. Furthermore, sensory avoiders and seekers may find some kind of solace, respectfully in risk-taking behaviours, or the numbing effects of the substance use that we take, of whatever substance it may be. They may do without being aware of the potential benefits or negatives, however. In the wider community, however, especially relevant to the autistic community, there's a huge need for facts and honesty when it comes to harm prevention. So we have these mixed messages, and on top of all that, a lack of access to factual evidence. This, I feel, is primarily driven by the war on drugs, which, let's face it, has been a dismissal failure for many years. It has been complicated to our ability to have our clear conversations, and is simply a war on people, that vulnerable people. Let's be clear here. For proper harm minimisation and prevention, we must have access to facts-based drug education backed by data. Black and white medical terms include and intangible information for us to base our decisions on. In schools, they have a hand puppet giraffe teaching drug education, as you may know and love, like I used to remember Harold the giraffe here in New Zealand. Harold, I believe, is very useful to teach other health needs such as nutrition, general health brand, but however, when it comes down to something as serious as substance abuse, I'm not sure whether a meeting with a giraffe puppet in the back of a bus can really cut it, especially for autistic kids. So what happens when an autistic person is really having substance use problems and asks for help? Currently, they hit the many barriers. The barriers to treatment are, so this is not autism specific, is CEP ready. Service lacks awareness about interest in or access to autism courses, poor assessment. What we need is for better and more accessible training for people who work in areas such as addiction, who systematically don't receive any information to expand their knowledge and skills, many of whom have only one idea of what autism is. And usually these ideas have come from movies or television shows, which has a very narrow view on this particular area. Second of all, the professional workforce must have access to decent assessment pathways when they encounter someone with autistic traits. This will empower the clinician to be able to get the support, guide, and work with the autistic person in a positive and safe manner. I would go as far as suggesting, as part of the initial comprehensive assessment process, that a brief autism questionnaire be used to gauge autistic potential. This would mean that the clinician is aware of the differences that will then impact the individual treatment plan, just as they would when we consider therapeutic interventions with the other minority groups. Too many of us, if not diagnosed, gets labelled as difficult, too hard to understand, inconsistent, unreliable, and even treatment resistant. Their frameworks of treatment just do not fit our ways of being, and if we're diagnosed, they claim to not have skills to work with autistic people and pass us back to disability. In some cases, disability will discharge the person from their services due to substance use, which means they and their whānau are on their own. This happens regularly and leaves the situation in a far worse scenario. The model of paths that autistic are run with no therapeutic are there to help them feel disempowered to support the positive change. I have already clearly spoken about the barriers to treatment and know that sometimes, if not often, autistic people slip through the gaps in this medical system or just the general healthcare system in general. So what I want to introduce today is a way to do at least a little something for ourselves, our loved one, a client who may feel empowered, or at least feel like you're doing something to help, because let's be honest here, being asked for it. Assertiveness. Another thing you can do to help us practice being assertive is a harm minimisation technique. Just to mention that traditional therapies such as ABA don't promote autonomy or assertiveness. Autistic children are often forced to agree or go along with others regardless of how much discomfort it might be bringing towards them. However,
Compliance isn't always expected in many scenarios. It seems like a requirement. How does this translate as you grow older and become more independent? Feeling equipped to turn down offers or requests is one of the most challenging things I think I have faced along the way, as well as asking for the right help. How many of you heard us children lines like, "Yes, of course she wants one. Just say yes, please. It would be rude to say no. Here, just take it." I learned that it was wrong or not such a privilege when someone was offering you something. As you may imagine, this brought me a world of pain and confusion, as well as feeling wrong for saying no. If the person then applied pressure, why not for example choke? This often led to me being convinced this was a good thing for me to do, even when I knew in my gut it simply was. I would go along with things that didn't feel right because of my intents needed to be liked and felt part of the group, or some kinds of groups, of any kind. Beautiful, nerds, popularity, and the list goes on in schools when I used to grow up. I didn't want to let people down or upset them. I felt like I had to please everybody around me. Well, I felt I might be intimidated, as though my needs weren't as important as the ones around me. Growing up as an identified autistic can give you deep-seated feelings of being worthless, hopeless, and helpless with these three in mind. Even though now we need to learn, now it's not the case, that combined with social naivety is pretty risky. People need to be able to make an informed choice in order to effectively say no to something, especially with many autistic people who are least likely to accept an idea but does not have the backing factual data identified as autistics or the like, which means our needs are not being met, or ways of not being accommodated in a safer way. For many and many others, gaining formal self-hypnosis can be the first time you have felt like you're a part of a community. It blew my mind the more I read people's stories, watch videos, read comments, and the occasional real-life conversations that takes place. There are many people that are similar to me. This sharing and absorbing of experiences is undoubtedly one of the best things that has happened to me in terms of identity while I've been sharing my stories on YouTube. Conclusion. A keen disability and addiction service. 1. People receiving addiction treatment needs access to diagnosis. 2. Development of autism-specific treatment plans. Substance use is another situation with behaviour is communication. Presently, the gap in professional understanding for these issues results in exclusion from many services. Whether this is mental health or not able to deal with the autism or disability providers, not able to manage addiction issues and the like. This leads to further compounding of these problems and puts people at serious risk, not to mention leaving their whānau at an odd as to how to assist them. For most of us, the road of drug use begins with the psychological health issues, trauma, pain, and the disconnection of society. The problem is often when this is forgotten, people believe that once you take the substance away, everything will be fine. Using drugs is a lie, even a shield that seals it and covers up and camouflages the deeper issues within these individuals. This is a huge safety issue in our group because taking things away that has been a shield for us, then you are exposed yet again. The first few weeks after detox for the wider population is high risk. Can you imagine how that translates for the autistics though, however? Often isolated, black and white thinkers as they are. My idealistic hopes and dreams for the future would be professionals working within the addiction sector begins to get a better understanding of the subtler looking autism. So another 2 is so that they will become open to accessing their clients who are having difficulties with mainstream therapies. 3, there is a development of autism-specific addiction therapies for more positive outcomes to come. 4, Tipo's new professional framework model goes away towards this, and since Tipo also have a large influence in the addiction sector, I hope this crosses over from disability to addiction, because this really isn't about boxes, this is really about people in general, no matter who and what they are. This quickly ends, hopefully, the bit about autism and mental health and drug substance. Give me the like for thumbs up for support, comment below. Feel free to share these videos around. Don't forget to, basically, if you haven't done so and you feel the need or have to, subscribe to my channel. Feel free to also down there to turn on the notification bell. So without further ado, guys, thanks for your support, thanks for watching. Do what you love what you do. Until next time, Aspie signing out, and I'll see you again soon.